Hey, it's some. Как выяснить надо отношения, relationships, как говорится. Что у нас там? Ага, как бы типа 18:30. Что будешь? 30. Вдруг вот это есть. Что я понял? Да, бегут, как говорится. Битрофейл, безработный. Я кушать хочу, кушать. Не хочешь? Не хочешь. Эй, come on, Эй, who's this? You're staying up here. Круто. Все, куда вперед? Куда вперед? Вот иди. Трейл. Эй. Надо есть много. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mike Groves. Very nice to meet you. Mike Groves. Thank you for becoming fun. Mr. A. Mr. Dix, thank you. Derek Finger. Hi. Hi there, Fireboy. Oh, Mr. Kyle, thank you for this years. For Chinese people. Aggressively playing, да. Да. Да, натощак. Натощак. Эй, ну подожди. О, нет, все функционирует. Thank you, everyone. Что у вас тут есть такое? Ну вот это есть на самом деле. Ладно. Так. Жмут нам спят, наоборот. Да, ну это есть на самом деле. Ну я пока не такой контрольный, что ли. Ну ладно. Наоборот, да нет. Ладно. Ой, ма. Snowy, freeze. Прикольно тогда. Считаю.
The production of this video was made possible by donors to the Orchestration Online Patreon initiative. Please consider adding your support to the creation of free educational internet resources by visiting our Patreon page linked below.
Thank you.
Hey there, this is your orchestration tutor Thomas Goss. One of the biggest requests in the Orchestration Online community is for legitimate access to film scores. When I first started this channel over a decade ago, there really weren't that many options for a film music student, unless they attended a university with a film score archive, like those at UCLA and USC. Or they might get a hold of a film score suite published by Hal Leonard from its Symphony Pops editions. But while the Hal Leonard scores can be useful to grasp the general orchestration of the original cues, they've been adapted to fit the standard instrumentation of the concert orchestra, not to mention the attention span of the average Pops concert goer. In the case of orchestration study, such a score may be lacking staves for electronic keyboards, extra standard instruments like more trombones and percussion, and certain rare special guests like contrabass trombone or bass oboe. Selections may also be restructured along more formal lines like movements of a suite, rather than the original scenes from the films. So in essence, a lot of these editions are similar to Prokofiev's concert suites from Alexander Nevsky or Lieutenant Kijé, which, great as they are, don't always represent the original film cues. Recently, though, several independent publishers have secured permission to release film music as it was originally scored, with all the information that might be missing from Symphony Pops editions. For a film music student, this is a dream come true. But obviously not enough developing orchestrators know about these new editions, because we still keep getting asked the question in the Orchestration Online Facebook group. In fact, I would say that this is now our most often asked question. So I'm taking 2 steps to address this problem. First, I've created a post on the official Orchestration Online website that links many forms of access to film scores for members of our community. And second, I'm launching a new series of videos here on this channel that review the different scores available and even provide a bit of orchestration analysis of a few pages from each score. So as the first entry to what I hope will be a long and enduring series of film score reviews, I can't think of a better example than James Horner's score to Aliens, as published by Chris Siddall. The music to Aliens has a bit of a checkered history, which you can watch in more detail in the special features of the DVD release for the box set. To cut a long story short, the score was composed under enormous time pressure due to huge delays caused by director James Cameron and producer Gail Ann Hurd. Finally, James Horner was let loose on the footage with only 2 weeks left and achieved a remarkable accomplishment of scoring a 2-hour picture with a towering orchestral score.
I ended up writing the cue as best I could, and then 2 days before, or day before, I was supposed to record the music. Massive changes. They'd changed the whole sequence around. And I was up for, 36 hours, making sense, retiming, rewriting like crazy, and then recording it. And then Jim says, well, can't we do this there? And can't we do this there? And Gail said, I thought we were going to have an acknowledgement there. And I said, well, you did yesterday, but now the sequence is changed. And that's how it just goes. And it was all a question of the pressure of time. I said, Jim, we're down to 5 or 6 days. I have to start writing, and I can't change anything once it's written. It's got to go straight to the copyists, because it's going to never make it to the stands. My job right now is to make sure the musicians have something to play at least that sounds 80% of what you're asking for. If I had more time, I could make it 100%, but we don't. And Gail's response was icy cold. She said, well, we'll just get somebody who can. And I said, please do. If you can get somebody more experienced and better able to produce this than me, I'd like to meet him, because I'm sure I'll learn something.
In spite of all that, the Aliens soundtrack is still a terrific piece of music, especially as scored with the assistance of orchestrator Greg McRitchie, and it well deserved the Oscar nomination it received the following year. What's great about Chris Siddall's edition is how it pulls back the curtain on a lot of special effects, ambient synth patches, and unusual instruments that Horner made part of the score, like kalimba and bowed styrofoam cup. If you weren't sure how some special effects looked on the page, the score to Aliens should fill in the blanks for you, and show how orchestral instruments can interrelate in unique, imaginative ways. As you read through the music along to the soundtrack recording, you'll also appreciate the terrific musicianship of the London Symphony Orchestra in tackling many of the extremely challenging passages with precision and intensity of feeling. Let's watch an excerpt from my score analysis video of the Q13M1 Facehuggers, looking over the eerie beginning with skittering strings, moving synth, and growling low brass. In spite of the many intriguing approaches and unique textural colors, the section I'll share with you now is just the tiniest introduction to a richly scored landmark piece of film music. Starting off here, we've got skittering at quarter note equals 60. So notice what Horner has asked for here. Highest pitches, random effects, short improvised squeaks, half arco, half col legno. And that is the same for all 4 of these divisi sections of violins. Now notice how we've got a kind of randomization or compression of the rhythmic elements here. So the first group are just doing quarter note triplets beamed as eighths. The second group are doing triplets which are skewed across the measures, with the beam groups starting after the first eighth. And then we've got eighths and then sixteenths. So it's really going to sound very random and completely improvised, even though it's beautifully controlled in terms of the incidence of the different rhythms. Of course, random effects, highest pitches, that could be anything. It could just really depend on which player is comfortable playing which high note, and that also contributes to the sense of randomness. So in case you were ever wondering how that skittering effect was scored, this is how it was done. And it has actually become a bit of a cliche. There are going to be a lot of what we would say formative gestures in this particular cue, and they were used so powerfully and memorably by Horner that they were imitated by a generation of film composers wanting to get some of the same tension and some of the same effects. Even though you're looking at some of these things now and thinking, oh wow, you know, I'm going to put that in my score, I would say, watch out. Don't contribute to the mass of scoring that is just imitating Horner. Come up with some of your own ideas inspired by his efforts here. That's my big advice. Now here we see the K250 playing that low ocarina patch. So probably the ocarina patch was meant to be played a couple octaves higher or more to get that weird kind of potato flute sound. But here it's being played very, very low, so what you hear is this kind of moaning sound, this kind of a sound. Very, very spooky. Then we hear this col legno, contrabasses and cellos, and as he's saying, divisi into 10 different players. Same thing with the contrabasses. What he wants is for each of the players to pick a different pitch depending on where they're sitting, and then just all hit the strings at the same time all together. He doesn't want all the players to hit all their strings. He wants each player to hit a single string as part of this tone cluster. You can tell that this is a tone cluster because of the square note heads. And here he's giving you the pitch set, right? He wants them to be playing pitches all the way from this low C all the way up to A. So that is actually 10 pitches altogether. And the same thing here, this C to this G. Chromatically speaking, that is 8 pitches in the pitch set. Now notice, not only do we have col legno, so hitting the strings with the back of the bow, but we also have an echo in there. So the player's going to hit it, and you're going to hear this ta, 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 ta. And then they do it again. And notice this little black line here. This means to just continue that effect, that echo effect, for the sound engineer. And that just continues onwards. There are going to be several other instances where this little black line is used, perhaps following another little pitch set that the players are being asked to play over, and just continuing on until the conductor brings it to a halt. So sometimes the line will indicate that the player is continuing to play. Sometimes it's an indication to the sound engineer to continue the sound effect for that long in the score. Now we get our first little bit of action here from our brass section, and this beautifully scrunched up chord. Just to mention that this is a score in C, as would be common for pretty much every modern film score today. So you can just look at these and see how they are positioned. And as confusing as it might be for the average concert score reader, who's used to just looking at something and transposing at sight, you can see how useful the bass clef is for scoring horns if you're going to score in C. So basically all the lower heavy brass plus the horns, starting at triple P, and they're all equal if they are all playing extremely softly. Here we've got ottava bassa under the tubas. Now the tuba players do not need an ottava bassa sign, but that is just for the conductor and score readers and so on and so forth. Now, that might actually have been stuck into their parts. I'm not sure about how much the average film session tuba player reads Ottava Bassa, but I'm sure that they can read it with no problem. It's just completely unnecessary in concert music. Alongside this, we've got a bass drum roll. Very important to know that gran cassa means bass drum in Italian. Now, when I play this section of the cue for you in a few minutes, you're going to see just how kind of useless niente really comes off as an indication. So, yeah, I mean, it's just shorthand for dying away into nothing, but it doesn't really have that beautiful effect of really fading off the edge of your ability to hear it. You just really hear the players kind of bring things to a close in a way that they normally would shape a note. So it's a little ambitious to really put this niente thing in here, which could just be faded out on the mixer, really. Of course, it's much easier when you are rolling a bass drum at triple P to bring that down to an inaudible finish. But the brass players, while they can do...
Там плохо играет. Ну, наоборот. Да, нормально. Ой, ладно, хватит. Чё?
Niente really well. In this situation, you know, trying to control these low notes and get a very clear sound and a perfect sound for the recording session, that's enough to worry about rather than trying to just really finesse a beautiful, perfect fading out that feels like a mixing board fade. Which, let's face it, that's really what a lot of people are asking for when they score niente.
Да.
Here we have the first appearance of a special guest. Styrofoam cup, bow slowly. And it really is just this kind of scraping sound. It's kind of...
Наоборот, блин. Ну, наоборот, играет. Сейчас будет работать, надо, видишь? Эй, кто здесь? Будем просто. Ну да, вот